All right, we will start in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wolverine.com's podcast, morning after edition. Anthony Broom here with former Michigan defensive lineman Ryan Van Bergen, and in a development that is pretty much emblematic of how this entire weekend has gone in the state of Oklahoma, our normal podcast recording software is not functioning. So this is going to be still going to be on YouTube, obviously in your podcast feeds, an audio only version. So those of you watching the video version get this pretty graphic that you're watching right now. We are brought to you today, of course, by our friends over at Lewis Jewelers. You can visit their location over at 300 South Maple Road in Ann Arbor. Proud supporters of Michigan athletics and the Wolverine. And with Ryan here, of course, we're also brought to you by Blue Lion Fitness. Ryan is joining us every week. Actually, next week, noon game, we'll be together live from Blue Lion Fitness. So that will be live in person about an hour or so after the game. I'll probably still do a quick video on the way over there, but the two of us will make our debut doing that next week. And Ryan, what should folks expect to, I won't say expect to see, but what do you guys have going on over there that you want to highlight today?
This is always an exciting time at Blue Lion because everybody's getting back into the swing of fall schedules and kids going back to school and college starting back up. And as the tailgate season approaches, the holiday season looms large. So you've got about 10 weeks to try and create some kind of deficit. So we've got group classes, we've got personal training, and lots of opportunities to try to burn some calories. So we're open at 5 a.m. We don't close till 8:30 p.m. And we're going to give you our best effort and try to keep it exciting, more so than the Michigan offense last night. So get off the couch, sign up for a drop-in, and we'll attack you down the field.
Love to see that. Probably need to get some of those offensive linemen in there. There is a number of ways we can go to start. Obviously, we'll start with offense. We'll discuss the defense. We'll give away, I guess this week, I'll put them in air quotes, game balls. And we will take a couple questions from, since we're not live, we'll take them from the Fort, our premium message board. So if you want to get on there too, use that promo code UM1. It's going to give you 2 months of access to our website for a single dollar. It's what my colleague Clayton Safety calls the best deal in America. So take advantage of that today. Overall thoughts, with the benefit of a few hours of sleep, which has not, last week, thoughts on the game were made a little clearer by that. This, a little cloudier, because I think despite the score, it never felt as close as it was. Just so many errors. I put it this way last night, Ryan. Michigan got it felt like almost every single break in that game, but Oklahoma was the team that made every single play, and they were the team that was more ready to play, and you give them credit to that. But I feel like in terms of a style fight, you got that team in a game, like in the type of game that I think you were going to be content to play out of. But the offense was so bad, and the offensive line was so bad, and everyone's got to wear this morning, including Chip Lindsey. But when you can't protect, and there are 3-4 defensive linemen in your quarterback's lap, freshman, graduate, number one recruit, walk on, it doesn't matter. There's not a whole lot you can get off the play sheet. So to me, just top to bottom, it's not a burn the tape game because you need to see what the hell happened here, but an incredibly disappointing and a team that did not look ready and looked actually fairly overwhelmed by that stage.
It's a fail. I mean, if you were to grade our offensive performance last night, and I'm not saying each player, but just as a unit in our scheme, our game plan, that's an F. There's an F performance on the biggest stage in college football. And it's disappointing considering the investments we've made in the offseason to try to rectify and create an offense, because not having an offense is nothing new for Michigan football. We found ways to win without offense. With that being said, there's plenty of things that you could point to as partial reasons that the game plan didn't go off as executed, but even so, couldn't get plays off the play sheet. I question what that play sheet says. I really do, because you look at even early on, okay, you go into the game, and I don't know when they knew that Klein wasn't going to be able to go, if that was, determined at at Oklahoma, or if they knew during the week of practice or what, but they had to have some inclination, I would say, that the Klein wasn't going to play, and that's a huge loss. He's probably Bryce Underwood's favorite target under duress, get you out of some red zone situations. Klein being down hurts. With that even being the case, though, you come out your first series and you're running bubble and you're running, up the middle, which is normal. That's Michigan football, smash, smash. I'm with it until they stop it. But then you run, you get into a rhythmic drive, I think the second drive, and you run some kind of crazy reverse to Donovan McCulley out of nowhere that doesn't need to be there. There's a lot of that. And then there was another series in the third quarter, I feel like, where we finally got some momentum and we had 2 runs and a screen and a punt. And to me, Chip Lindsey, the offensive line didn't protect. There wasn't good run blocking. We didn't have receivers with separation. We can go on through this list. But I think it starts with what you're setting your guys up for. And Chip Lindsey, I don't think you're setting our guys up for success in a lot of the different things that you're running and calling. To highlight a few things, I think the lack of down the field passing. I mean, we're just missing concepts. We're missing mesh, which is a concept, not a route. It's a concept. We're missing mesh. We're missing levels, which is a concept. It's not route. It's that to me. We're missing an angle route with our running back. Like, I don't understand how we could be missing these basic elements of fundamental offense. And in lieu of running these concepts, we are running 2 tight end, 3 tight end, trying to swap, which it worked once. So we're going to hang around on that, but trying to swap pre-snap, getting him in the misalignment and run the same play. I'm frustrated. I'm, trying to be patient considering that it's week 2, but we have a Ferrari and we brought it to a fucking tractor pull. That's what we did with our offense this game. And, shame on you, Chip Lindsey, and shame on, I want to say the offensive line, but I don't even know that I necessarily blame them entirely. The box was 9. The box was 10. The box was 11. The box was 12. I mean, we just kept going into the box, and you're not going to find room there. So, Chip Lindsey, very thoroughly disappointed, and your ass had better be sore because Venables has been all over it for what this game was.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I was thinking that last night, and that they were calling a game the way they would have liked it to go instead of the way it was. I think it's pretty clear that the clinical, detail-oriented, smash you in the mouth offense of the Jim Harbaugh era, even last week, people were saying, "Oh, well, I guess we've turned the page from that." I mean, look at the way Bryce was operating and distributing the ball around the field, and there was tempo, the ball was out quick, and I don't think it's any coincidence that the few times that you had any sort of momentum in the passing game or momentum on offense at all was when you got Bryce Underwood on the move. They only ran him once, which I think is a huge mistake. Look how many. Do you think the hits that John Mateer took last night affected their ability to win? I mean, that guy was a warrior. You can't. So much of that was coaching scared. It really was. But like I said, I don't think it's a coincidence that they got Bryce Underwood on the move, and it was only a few times, but they took a couple shots down the field. One of them was the jump ball reception by Donovan McCulley, who had 3 catches for 91 yards on 9 targets. Just nothing was done with a whole lot of conviction or confidence. And would that game really have been all that much different in terms of how we're talking about it today, in terms of how it looked on paper, if Bryce does take a couple more shots down the field and maybe he throws another pick and this is a 27-13 game instead? I don't think it looks a whole lot different. So the lack of aggression, the conservative nature, it felt, I hate to say it almost felt like they sort of turtled, knowing that they weren't quite ready for this and hoping the defense could step up and make a play. And we'll talk about the defense here in a bit. But I just think right now there's not, again, and there was, to give some context on Marlon Klein, I think maybe Wednesday or so, there started to be some buzz that he might not play or that he had suffered an injury in practice. It was an ankle injury. He came out and warmed up in a heavy wrap on Saturday night, but they had not. I mean, Zach Marshall. I like Zach Marshall as a guy, but he was basically their starting tight end, and he's just not. I don't think that's what his role is on a good offense. So,
If he's
about him. I
playing
mean,
tight end, his role has to be tight end. That's his
right,
position, right? Like, what
right,
else is he going to play? He's listed as a TE.
right. No, that's what I'm saying in terms of he's probably more of your tight end 3 or 4, but Marlon Klein
Yeah.
is hurt. Hogan Hansen was active but didn't do much out there. Uh, and
It
again, I
felt
don't
like,
think.
sorry to cut you off. I was
No,
going
go
to say
ahead.
that, but
I'm
it felt like to
rambling.
me, like as soon as Klein was out, it felt like we were playing with 10. And as soon as El Hadi went out, it felt like we were playing with 9.
Yeah,
And it felt like it just kept coming down. And I just was surprised because it's early on, like, okay, they're not, maybe there's a little fall off, but where's Klein's backup? So I'm sorry, I did cut you off. I don't understand
no,
the
I
depth
was
chart in terms of
rambling.
tight end depth.
I
Yeah,
was tr-
I was surprised that, okay, so Klein's out. So now the tight end pass play, the pass game's out for tight ends because Klein doesn't play. Where's the tight end targets? They still existed, but we didn't roll them out. And that was the type of thing. And I mean, I, I, I spent too much time by myself and my wife fell asleep early. So I was watching the game and just, think a great microcosm. If I could boil it down to try to give you a Spark Notes version of why I think the offense is sputtering so hard, they have a formation that they come out in that they like that wasn't as consistent or relevant last year without Chip Lindsey, but it is a pistol formation with the back directly behind Bryce Underwood. Bryce at 4 yards depth, catching a short shotgun snap. You watch these snaps of this pistol formation, and usually it's Bryce with a reverse pivot where he turns his back and loses all sight of the defense and receivers. And it's a quick action. If it's giving the ball, it's giving the ball. If it's keeping, it's keeping. But then he's got to flip his head around and he's got to make a decision within 1/2 of a second. I don't like the action for the run game because it sets Justice Hayes and Jordan Marshall into the line slower, which is not going to help us. So I don't like the action. It takes Bryce's head and eyes away from the defense. So I don't like the action. But Chip Lindsey likes it in the playbook. So guess what? We run the flip in action. And I hate it. Are we going to have the awareness as the coach? It's game 2. Are we going to have the awareness of the coaching staff to look at that on film and go, you know what? This shit's not working. Or are we going to keep banging our head against the wall? Because that's kind of where I'm at. Is my hands are folded. Of I see the problems. Do you? And are you going to fix them? It's that
yeah.
simple.
Also, with Max Bredesen as the slot, they're probably running a screen pass. I mean, that's one of the most obvious tells in the world. The run game in particular, again, credit to Justice Haynes. He had another explosive this week, the 75-yard touchdown run, first play of the second half. And someone had a Justice Haynes, Bryce Underwood question that I'll ask you here in a little bit, but you take out this, and you can't, people do this all the time. Oh, if you take out this play, then they did this for this amount of yards. But specifically with Michigan's run game, and they wanted to run the ball, you take out that 75-yard run. They had 31 rushes for, quick math, 71 yards, which I think is somewhere around 2.4 yards per carry. That's awful. I mean, that's awful. And yet they kept going to it. And like I said before, I think that they're, if they're going to build this thing around Bryce Underwood, you have to let this guy make a play with his legs, put him in the shotgun, give him a few extra seconds to do something with the football. The quick game wasn't there, and just Oklahoma was all over it. And you give Brent Venables and those guys all the credit in the world, but it was just an unmitigated disaster. And I don't know how you turn the page from that. I think it would be one thing if you said, listen, it's week 2, it's Oklahoma. This is a big test for Bryce Underwood in our offense. So we're going to see how much they can handle. But why this feels to me like a missed opportunity is that you didn't ask him to do anything. You didn't learn anything about Bryce Underwood and what your offense can be in this game because, one, you couldn't get calls off the sheet, and 2, you just went uber conservative. And that looked like if he was healthy, Davis Warren could have run that same game plan last night and probably did as well. And I'm not killing Bryce individually. He was not set up for success, but I don't know. I don't know what the game plan was. I don't know what gave them the confidence that they could lean on their defense and just do enough offensively, because I didn't see that on film last week. So I guess just top to bottom, just a disaster there. I want to ask you this, because someone on TV, they did catch Bryce Underwood and Justice Haynes in a little bit of a verbal spat on the sidelines. I think one of the Klein was in there kind of keeping them. It never came to blows or anything, but these guys had to be separated. Someone asked on the board, and I'll give them proper credit here in a second, but how normal is stuff like that on the sideline? Is that just, could you point a camera at the sideline at any point during a game and catch something like that? Or is that something that should register as a bit of a concern?
I wouldn't register it any sort of concern. At least initially, something like repetitive, consistent, then maybe. But it's funny, that same scenario warranted like multiple texts to come into my phone and ask what was going on at the moment. Even my mom, what's going on with them? What I think happened and what should have happened more. Bryce Underwood, I agree with a lot of the points you're making. There were a lot of metaphors that I was thinking to try to explain my best, paint my picture and what I see it as. And, I never came up with the best one, but to me, it's like you asked for one of the world's best heart surgeons to perform a bypass and you gave him a butter knife and, a flash. It's like, good luck. That's what you're doing to Bryce Underwood. And, the Ferrari to truck tools, another good one. But I feel like in general, like offensively, our game plan of even that long run, if you were look at that long run, we had a 3-snap shift of 3 bigs moving sides. Oklahoma did not shift because they had a wave going that same way, and they thought that they'd get their bodies over there, and they didn't. They lost. But they were set up wrong. They'll watch that film today and say, hey, guys, if we set up properly and move our guys, this is no hit. They would have 75 yards of rushing. That's lucky that hit. I want to make sure that's noted. It's not some kind of genius plan. It's the same play. And the thing that bothers me the most is that all right, you're going to stick with the run, then get creative with the run. Don't do the same split zone like James Franklin at Penn State, hoping that it's going to work better. Run some G scheme, some tackle pull, get link moving. El Hadi's one of your best pullers. You lost your best puller. We just said, just like we did with Klein, then we won't pull anymore. So you're going to not throw your tight end. You don't have Samaj. Samaj's another guy at half a man down. You don't have Samaj. You don't have El Hadi, who's your puller. And you should start taking this stuff out of the playbook. Snippet. And it's just like, that's not a very big playbook. It's very short chapters already. So that offensive performance, we don't have to have the sexiest offense in college football to win a lot of football games, but it's got to be better than what it was last night against good teams.
Absolutely. And operationally, there were issues all over the field too. You do run Bryce.
What's sorry, that? I didn't get to what I was going to say. What I think happened, Bryce should have this as his check, but they got too many in the box. I got a guy bigger than their guy. I'm checked into a favor. He probably did some sort of thing that McCulley didn't see, and he thought he saw, and so McCulley's blocking. So Justice Hayes gets over and goes, why didn't you give me the ball? It's red zone. I want to eat. And Bryce Underwood chops back. I see a match. I'm a quarterback. I make this play. That's all reasonable for the people that were asking. I didn't answer the initial question.
No, it's all good. Thank you for addressing that. I was going to say, operationally, you do run Bryce Underwood once, and he gets a gain of 9 yards. Then you come back to the line. It's 2nd and 1, and you're lined up to run a pass play. You don't like what you see, and you call a timeout. Early in that fourth quarter, I think it was. You burned 2 timeouts in like 3 or 4 snaps, and if you have any sort of identity or any sort of conviction, and you want to be this team that is, for a team that ran the ball 32 times in this game, you picked up those 9 yards. Just go get that 1 yard on the ground. Keep those chains moving. I think after that, it was somehow it wound up being a 2nd and 15, and then Bryce was going to let the clock run out, so they had to burn another timeout. So you burned 2 timeouts there. There was a play, and this is completely out of order, out of sequence. I think you had a 3rd and 6 where you run the ball and you get it to like 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. And then you send the field goal team out there where on a 3rd and 6, if you don't pick up that first down, that's probably a go situation. They punted one time for their 38-yard line. I'm sorry. I thought that Donovan Savada was a Lou Groza Award snub last year, and he was a weapon from anywhere on the field. I'm kicking that 55, 56-yard field goal with him. And it sucks he missed one last night, but like that's still a guy that has range up to 60 yards. So it just felt like in some of those key moments, and there were things like this that happen on defense too. Just poorly managed, poorly executed, just a complete and total clown show in all areas of the game. So again, you don't burn the tape because there are things you can pick up, but just a complete disaster on that side of the ball. I want to flip over to the defense now, which I can't remember if I said this in the recording that we started elsewhere or if I said it earlier here, but if you had told me last night that you were going to hold Oklahoma to 24 points, I would have felt probably still picked you to lose, but would have felt a lot better about that. And like I said before, this was a game where Oklahoma made all of the plays, but made, tangible mistakes too. John Mateer threw the interception. They botched a punt that credit to Cole Sullivan for getting down there and picking up a turnover and scoring territory for the Michigan offense. But there were 3 key drives in this game. Those got to have it moments. And I wrote this last night. Give me just a second to pull it up. First drive of the game. Oklahoma comes out, I believe, runs a drive that was 12 plays for 75 yards. Touchdown. Last drive right before the half. You missed the field goal. Oklahoma marches down the field, 10 plays, 80 yards. Touchdown. Last night, they get the ball with about 10 minutes left in the game. And it's a one-score game. Despite all of that, it's 21-13. Michigan gets a stop, gets off the field. You're going to put the ball in your freshman quarterback's hands with a chance to maybe score a touchdown, go for 2, tie this thing up, despite all of that stuff that had happened. That last play, the last drive of the game, I think it was 17 plays, 80 yards, took 9 minutes off the clock. You salted away. So they completely, those 3 gotta have it moments, and really all the gotta have it moments throughout the night. Oklahoma was superior to the Michigan defense, which I think when I flip on the PFF grades today, going to be a lot of orange and a lot of red in the tackling department. There were shots down the field. There were missed opportunities to make plays. Jair Hill could have had an interception twice. He bobbled, the same pass attempt, couldn't call it in. Next play, Brandon Hillman has a free shot on John Mateer, bounces off of him. Mateer launches the ball down the field for, I believe, a 34-yard gain. So just, from a style perspective, I think you got Oklahoma in the type of game you wanted to get them in. But when push came to shove, you didn't make any plays that mattered. And they made all of them.
They did. And a lot of credit. I think Oklahoma is going to be a very good team when all is said and done at the end of the year. So you can't really take anything away from what they were able to do. I think Mateer is going to be a top-level quarterback when all is said and done. And, to be honest, I think we did a lot to benefit him. It bothered me to no end watching that game unfold. And we've talked already about the conservative style of play that you saw from the offense and the defense. I don't know if it's attempting to play complementary football or if that's just where we fell, but very soft zones, very light rushes of showing 5 or 6 on the box, but always backing out, only having 4 in rush, especially early on. We were playing without Jayshon Barnum. It was like we didn't really roll out the whole defense until maybe the second half or even the fourth quarter. And I just was disappointed by our lack of ability to get off the field when it counts and when it matters. Third down conversions, we were not very good. We're doing this from the phone, so that's usually got my information on it. But at one point, I know that they were hanging out above or at 50% on third down conversions, and that's great for an offense, but it's terrible for Michigan defense. That's something that you'd have to go back years and years to see teams that have had a lot of success against Michigan defenses on third down. And a lot of it is because we're playing, in my opinion, way too conservative. You got 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and you're only bringing 4. You're only bringing 3. You're only, there's to me, a lot of passive and a lot of keeping them in front as if we're afraid of what Oklahoma was going to do to us offensively. And they are a good team, don't get me wrong, but I thought you saw Michigan's best defense, when we pinned our ears back, we had 5 into the rush. We had 6 into the rush. We had pressure, and there had to be decisions made quickly. When they got to operate, Oklahoma, when they got to operate and execute in a rhythm that they liked, at a tempo that they liked, we were in bad phase. And, compared to the first game, the tempo that Oklahoma used, there's a lot of times where I feel like you saw guys arms up, looking at each other, not knowing what the play call is, not lined up properly, and there's a lot of work to be done defensively to hold them to 24 with the performance that we had. I thought was good, but there's across the board places where we need to get better if we're going to compete for a Big Ten championship or want a spot in the playoff. If any of that's really on the table this year, we got a long way to go.
Yeah, and I said that Oklahoma made every single play. There were probably 3 or 4 drops in there as well. So didn't make every single play, but the consequential ones absolutely. On third downs, Oklahoma was 9 for 17. It felt like, especially early, the third and longs. I feel like we came on here last year and lamented the third and long failure to execute by the Michigan defense way too many times. That felt like a defensive performance that was very much in line with what the first 7 or 8 games were last year. So that was a bit of a disappointing regression. John Mateer ran the ball 19 times for 74 yards. To a certain extent, that was expected, but there were also some obvious John Mateer rundowns where they just didn't. It's like they didn't know it was coming or didn't know it was something that was in his toolkit. So disappointing there overall. To their credit, they in the second half, I thought they did a much better job of kind of ratcheting down. And Jayshon Barham did come out of the locker room, but and played fairly well. I think he had 6 tackles, but overall, it was a bit, it felt like, again, early last year where your defense doesn't make your offense isn't helping your defense. They're out there way too much, but someone's got to make a play. And TJ Metcalf made a play. All the credit in the world. Had an interception. Cole Sullivan had the special teams turnover, but you got to cash in on some of those opportunities that they had, and they weren't able to. So any other thought? I mean, I don't know much more to fixate on with the Michigan defense. I think obviously the offense is the big question mark coming out of this one, but defensively,
I would say that it was very concerning that against a good offensive line, our defensive tackle and edge rushers looked very average. That's some place of concern. I always am going to have a lot of focus on the defensive line because I truly think you're just like on offense, your defense is going to be a whole lot better if they don't have to cover for very long or if they don't get blocked because you're absorbing blockers. So your defensive line sets you up for success. And on the interior, we didn't do anything of any significance. We're really feeling the loss, and it was something I was curious how it would develop, but we're really feeling the loss of Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham on the interior. We got some transfers in, but I don't think Rayshon Benny had his best game. I don't think he'd come on a microphone and tell you he played his best game. 44, Payne Jr., I don't think he played his best football at defensive tackle, really high pad levels, getting moved off the ball consistently. Derek Moore, didn't hear his name called one time or maybe one time. TJ Guy, one time, maybe he's in there. But you play in a game that's top 10 matchup, or not top 10, top 20 matchup, night game. There's got to be a Michigan defensive lineman who's causing problems. And we had plenty of opportunities. That was a game where the D-line could have made an impact and didn't. And so as a former D lineman, as someone who has been very, very happy to watch the parade of talent that has come through that position group, it concerned me. Little red flag popped up that there wasn't a single guy that was not only not holding his own against Oklahoma, but that could win against Oklahoma linemen. That's a concern, as we move toward Big Ten play.
1,000%. So that's going to do it for offense, defense. We can make the joint decision now. Do you have a game ball you want to give out? Because
I'm giving it to John Mateer. We made John Mateer look like Johnny Manziel, and I don't think John Mateer. No, this is no disrespect. That man played a heck of a football game, but I don't think he's anything special if the ball has to go past the 10-yard marker. But Wink Martindale decided to sit in a soft zone and watch him march the ball down the field 8 yards at a fucking time. So my game ball goes to John Mateer. Wink, you should be the one delivering it to him because you made him look like a damn Heisman candidate. Thank you for that.
That would have been mine as well. Had to scrape that together for the site last night. That was fun to take some of those arrows, so to speak. That being the word of the day. Because we are recording on Zoom, it's giving me a countdown that we have about 9 minutes left here. So I'm going to use that time to take a few of these questions on the message board. I asked you already about Justice Haynes and Bryce Underwood. That was from Kev5272. Aertle94 wants to know, there were obviously a ton of issues last night across the board, but what does Ryan consider the most glaring? Was it offensive line play, offensive play calling, game management, etc.?
Play calling. Both sides of the ball, play calling. The sliders on an away game with a young quarterback and a good defense, we should have put pressure on them and stressed them out. And instead of trying to go win a football game, we called a game not to lose and to not get beat too poorly. And everything stems to me from play calling. And then you can evaluate the line play better if the play calling is better. So until play calling improves, or changes slightly at least, I don't know that you can get a true evaluation of what the players were like by unit.
Michael Spath asked, why do so many defenders on blitzes try to decapitate quarterbacks instead of tackling them? The amount of times DBs go flying right by is infuriating.
I think it's a ball thing. Even Barnum's targeting last week, I mentioned the quarterback was going to that very first hand release of the ball to go into a throwing motion. It's the excitement of the strip sack and getting a fumble. I don't think it's the missing of the quarterback. The ball is high, so you go high attempting to get the ball, and you go up against a guy like Mateer who's strong in the legs and squatty dude, and you're too high, he's going to shrug you. And it's one of those things. It's the second move that you make is you swipe for the ball with the outside hand, but the inside hand must secure the tackle. And everybody remembers about the ball swiping hand, but that secure the tackle hand, people commonly forget. And that's a coaching thing. Got to be coached on it. Otherwise, you're not going to do it in the game.
Oswald the Great asks, what are your thoughts on the D-line overall in that game? Is there any concern level for the D-line, or is it too early? I thought we really struggled to bring pressure with 4 or 5 and have to blitz too much later in the game.
I agree with you. I don't think we're necessarily helping them out a ton, because what I saw, at least early on, was a lot of 4-man straight rush where we're going the direction we're lined up. We're not going to twist. We're not going to stunt. We're not going to slant. We're going to come straight down their pipe and see if we can beat you one-on-one. That happens in football, but if you don't mix it up, it becomes a lot easier as an offensive lineman to protect against and run your pass pros. And then, so we didn't help them. But by the same token, when I did see guys invasion rush, see a lot of guys right down the middle, collar to collar with the offensive lineman they're going against and just doing pile pushing and throwing hands in. And when you see that type of thing, that's usually a bad sign. There's not guys winning on edges and creating edges. And, sometimes it's a game plan. If you got a running quarterback, you want to keep him in. Maybe he's not as good in the pocket. So maybe that's part of the game plan. But I didn't see guys winning reps in run game or in pass time. So my concern level for the D-line is high, that they're not making the impact they should be because they're not playing with the technique they should be. And so hopefully that's something that we can get fixed, because we should have the depth at that position.
I'll take this one here from CT Blue 72. He says, if you could do it all again, hindsight being 2020, would you self-impose weeks 1 and 2 or weeks 3 and 4 for a Sherrone Moore suspension, knowing that week 2 was always going to be tough with a built-in excuse? I wouldn't have self-imposed at all, for being honest, but given that they did, I mean, it doesn't matter. For those wondering how that suspension is going to work this week, Sherrone can be with the team until midnight on game day. And then once game day hits, he is not able to come back until 12:01 the day after the Nebraska game. So can coach the team this week. It's an incredibly important week to reset all of this. And then he's gone for 2 weeks. So it's less than ideal, certainly. But if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have self-imposed it all and just dealt with whatever he needed to deal with. I think we'll take one more here from A2 Jim, and he wants to know how much of the the offensive line failings are on coaching versus players. And importantly, it looked like we were out physicaled on both sides of the ball. Does it appear to you, Ryan, that Michigan has a strength and conditioning problem, I should say?
Oh, that I think is probably a little bit overstating it. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I thought one thing that I mean, Venables is one of the best defensive guys in college football. You watched last week Ohio State Texas matchup, and just people talk about Sarkisian and the offensive line. Venables, Clemson hasn't been Clemson since Venables left Clemson, so he was something special. And so I do think you got to give a lot of credit to what they were doing defensively. They had a lot of line stop, linebacker overlap that was going to mess with your blocking schemes, and so they did a great job. But it was easy to do a good job because they knew what was coming. That's why I'm so upset with Chip Lindsey. But besides that point, offensive line play, I feel like we've got guys that are the archetype and what they're supposed to look like 6'5, 6'6, 6'7, 300, 310, 320. We got a coach who played offensive line and was a pretty good player in Sherrone Moore. We've got Grant Newsome, who's been with the program since 2018 as the O-line coach. So there's no excuses for the O-line not to be good, including strength and conditioning. The one thing that I will say is one guy that we got down into the depth chart, and again, if we're using my phone, but I believe his numbers were maybe 55, but he came in for El Hadi. He is an EF last name,
Nathan Afobe.
But Afobe, he is not ready. And no offense to him, but he got his ass pushed around. He was a liability. He was not ready. And Al Hadi being in a boot is a little concerning. See what we do with the shuffling of the offensive line. But I worry about our depth. As you see Al Hadi go down and Al Fadi comes in and he's not up to snuff. I got to believe the next man in, he's in there because there's no one else better. So I got a little concerned with the depth of the O-line. And to be honest, my last year, I kind of stood on my rock and said, hey, leave Sherrone alone. He's figuring it out year one. The only thing I care about is that the offensive line gets good because that's his specialty. That's where he lives. That's what he knows. Again, it's a mountain I will die on. If the offensive line is no good this year and has no depth this year, my concern level is getting to a boiling point with Sherrone Moore because you've had Grant Newsome in your staff forever. You have been an O-line guy your entire career. There's no excuse going through year 2 into year 3 to not have a 7, 8, 9, 10 deep O-line that's competing for the Line of the Year award and a guy that's looking for, the Lombardi or the Outland or the Remington or whatever they are. But I'm concerned. We got to get the play calling better to give them a chance, but I'm concerned about the depth, and we'll have to see how it plays out. They will play teams just as good as Oklahoma coming up, so we'll see if they can have a better performance.
Yep, all hands on deck now to figure it out. Michigan plays my alma mater on Saturday, Central Michigan. That's going to have to be a laugher, get some of that momentum back. Next week is an identity week. You figure out who you are and go out there and execute it on Saturday. Set yourself up for 2 weeks from now when you go to Nebraska. That's going to do it for us here. Of course, be sure to like this video. Oh, it is an audio version today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Over half of the people who watch our videos are not subscribed. I believe the number is 54%. It's going to help us show up in your feeds. If you hit the bell, you're going to find out whenever a new video is posted, whenever we go live. So use that to your advantage. Be sure to use that like button, subscribe to our channel. You can get the audio versions of our shows wherever you get your podcasts, specifically Apple and Spotify. Use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site for only a single $1. Ryan and I will be together next week at Blue Lion Fitness. Looking forward to that. Hopefully have a nice, thorough, decisive victory to talk about for the Michigan Wolverines. But for now, for Ryan Van Bergen and the Wolverine, I'm Anthony Broom. We will talk to you again next week.